New year, and yes, it is 2025, and today's episode is one you absolutely don't want to miss. As we step into the new year, the conversation around UFOs, UAPs, and extraterrestrial life has never been more intense or more important. Governments are inching towards transparency, whistleblowers are stepping forward, and humanity is starting to ask, are we ready for what's out there? Well, joining me today is none other than Stephen Bassett, a pioneer in the UFO disclosure movement and the executive director of the Paradigm Research Group. Stephen has dedicated decades to advocating for government transparency and pushing for the acknowledgement of extraterrestrial life. And in today's episode, we're diving deep into the possibilities, the challenges, and the profound implications of open contact with extraterrestrials. What would such an event mean for humanity? Are we prepared? And how does 2025 fit into the bigger picture of disclosure? So sit back, stay curious, and get ready for a thought-provoking conversation that's truly out of this world. I'm Tony Sweet with Truth Be Told. Please welcome back to the Truth Be Told studios, Stephen Bassett. All right, he's back, and he's bad as ever.
I see we have a big audience today. That's good. Excellent.
You know, nobody ever shows up till you get here. I don't know what the magnetism you have.
Let me say something right away. That graphic that you put up, which I think you're familiar with, you know what you put up there.
Yep.
I'm going to get in touch with Conscious Life because I just noticed it. I mean, I checked the site out, but the title is it's a little off. Humanity versus the ETs, I think, gives the wrong tone to this. It's not humanity versus the ETs, which does kind of imply conflict. It's really humanity and the ETs, and I'm going to see if I can get that graphic changed. And if it's a versus, it's really humanity versus the truth embargo.
I love that.
I'll see if I can adjust that, but you get the picture.
I get the picture, and I'm glad you clarified that. And speaking of that, you are going to be at Conscious Life Expo coming up February 7th through the 10th. You are going to be on Friday night. You're going to be the main act of setting the tone for the whole event, and it's going to be from Friday at 2 to 3:30. I can't read that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so actually they have the title as ETs, the U.S. and the human race. So
that's good. That's good.
So
no problem.
Let's just dive right into that. And it is 2025, and for your case, our case in this industry. Why is 2025 such a pivotal year for UFOs and extraterrestrial disclosure? Since we've had so much in the past few years of governments and whistleblowers coming forward, what makes 2025 so important to what we're doing, the research that we're doing, and the information we're trying to get out?
Well, yeah, the year is a luck of the draw. Looks like it's going to be 2025. It had to be some year, right? Yeah, it's like I used to run marathons, and mostly it's a slog, right?
Right.
You just trudging through it, right? Whatever, trying to get there. The really great part is the finish line, and that comes when it comes, right? When you finally get there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we are at the finish line, finally. So that's the first reason. What's the finish line? The end of the truth embargo. A government policy that there's no there, just go away, live your life,
right,
and don't pay attention. So I didn't think it would take this long, but there are reasons why it did take this long. So, and over the years, I will say this, I have been generally optimistic. I've always, anytime I saw the window kind of opening to maybe get this done, I would talk about that. I'd try to be positive. There were times when I remember saying, "Look, we're screwed." after the 9/11 in 2001,
right.
I knew we're sidelined. Right? God knows when we're going to be able to get back on track.
Right.
But mostly I'm positive because I'm an activist, and one of the key to activism is you have to keep people engaged. You have to keep them focused and give them hope that the thing that needs to be done, that's in the best interest that they care about, will happen. And oftentimes the optimism was reasonably well placed, but then things happen. This has been a very dramatic 21st century, in case you were wondering, and things just happen, and so we're on. This gets sidelined, but it was inevitable. The end of the truth embargo was always inevitable,
Right.
and in the last 7 years, we've been heading right to the finish line, and we're practically at the finish line. So that's what I'm going to be addressing.
So I mean, as a marathon, I was not a marathoner. I did short distance because I called what they called the fat man relay. I didn't do long distance. That was not for me. But I know a lot of people that do run marathons, and at the end they get noodle legs. So so what's going to keep humanity from getting noodle legs right at the end of the marathon and crossing that finish line? What's going to keep us from that?
Good point. Well, the vast majority of people have not really been running a marathon; they've been watching it.
True, that would be me.
They got some hot coffee, whatever. They go get some pizza, come back, the finish line. But the people who've been running it, oh yeah, I got noodle legs, I got noodle brain.
I bet.
It's taking a toll. But then that's true of all major activist movements. That comes with the deal. If you don't want to put up with that, then don't do it. And I have no problem. It's wonderful. I've never regretted getting into this field 29 years ago. But a lot of my colleagues didn't make it.
Yeah.
Gone. A lot of them, there's some that are still here, but they're not in good shape.
Right.
All right. And so I'm very blessed that I've managed to hold up. I'm still in pretty good shape, got some years left, and I'm clearly going to be able to see the finish line. So let's quickly recap here.
Please.
I'm going to give a quick outline. And this is what I'm going to be talking about at the Conscious Life Expo, which, by the way, is going to be packed to the gunwale.
You get your tickets now because it's.
You get your tickets now. Get your hotel room now if you even have a chance of staying in the Hilton. There's going to be a lot of superstars there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be packed, and I'm going to mask up. Just let you know now, you're going to see Steve with a mask because there's a lot of stuff going around, all kinds of things, and so I think we need to. You need to take care of yourself.
Right.
All right.
Right.
But that's just me. I'm not preaching here. So, two things are happening. One, over the last 7 years, because of a major breakthrough, we've been on a study course towards disclosure. We've had some setbacks. We've been running into the wind, but we've never turned around. We've never stopped. We've never had to reverse course, which has happened many times since 47. And so every year we get even closer and closer, and the pressure on the government's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And most of this progress is the reason it's important is because it's not just more research, right, or some more docs or something. No, we're talking political progress. The reason I entered this field in 1996 is because, one, I had to do something, and this turned out to be it, and I really needed to do it. I'm so glad I did. But because I found a path, and that path was to do something that just wasn't being done at the level needed for whatever reason, not throwing shade here. And that's political activism. There'd been a little of it, a touch of it, but not much. Engaging this on a political level was not happening much. Now, unbeknownst to me, when I entered in 96, there had been a political engagement of the issue that started in 93 that I didn't even know about. And that was the Rockefeller Initiative. March Rockefeller, who was very high up in, well, let me put it this way, Democratic circles. He'd funded the DNC. He was a friend of the Clintons and all that. He approached the Clinton administration to try to move this forward, try to really get something done. That was a clear political engagement. It was activism funded by Lawrence Rockefeller. And that was recent. So that had been started in 93, and pretty much that effort ended in 96. He died not too long after that, but very little. Right. And so I said, I'm going to engage the politics. And so I found a path, which was to become a lobbyist, be the first lobbyist, which was kind of a milestone, attracted some press attention, and off I go. And so, and the reason I did it is that I came to understand that the problem with getting the truth from the government wasn't science and research and proof.
Hmm.
The nature of the embargo was to separate from all that,
Right.
meaning I don't care how much proof you have. We're not going to tell you there's ETs here. We're going to say there's nothing there. Go home, do something else. But the proof kept piling up. I mean, it was massive. It was ridiculous.
Right.
And I'm going, well, then why aren't we there? And I realized this is a political decision, like embargo in Cuba, right? They embargoed Cuba. It's still embargoed, right? Going back all the way to something like 62, 3.
Yeah.
How many years is that? It's not a science
60
problem.
some
It's
years
not a
ago.
proof problem. It's a political decision. We don't want you to go to Cuba. It's there. We acknowledge that. And we're not going to change that policy until something happens which forces us or convinces us to do so. That's exactly what they did with the UFO issue, except it was worse, right? They not only embargoed it, they basically said there's nothing there. So it was an embargo on something that didn't exist, and that was the challenge politically that this issue was facing. And I said, boy, that's a problem, and that has to be addressed as a political activist movement, much more broad, much more substantive. And so that's what I've been involved in for 26 years. And not surprisingly, the end of the truth embargo is being brought around, not because even more evidence turned up. It is because the political process finally really started getting underway between 2017 and 2020. Essentially, to basically end of 2019, so 2 years. And the political process has been moving forward ever since.
What was that? What was that pivotal switch? Was there a particular person that spoke up? Was it a group of people that spoke up, or was just finally the government had enough of people bombarding them with questions, or a little bit of everything?
Absolutely, a question is going to be asked by many and answered. History, I think, is which will go through this entire period. Well, the whole 77 years, but particularly the last 7 years with a fine tooth comb. And given where we are now, I think the evidence is going to be there. They're going to be able to put together a complete, I think, very thorough analysis of these 7 years. As you go back in time, less so because the government probably destroyed a lot. A lot of people have died, but nevertheless, this 7 years is going to get a wonderful historical treatment. And I believe they are going to conclude, the historians, that the turning point, and this, it's a prejudice of mine,
right,
occurred, I think it was October 11th of 2017, when a website went up on the World Wide Web regarding an organization with a rather odd name of the To the Stars Academy of Arts and Sciences, CEO'd by a rock star who had made a lot of money in rock music, who'd had a intense interest in the subject going all the way back to high school. His name was Tom DeLonge. He was the CEO. And they put up this website about an organization that was going to engage this issue on a multi-platform way, in terms of books, in terms of documentaries, in terms of research into aspects of the field as well. And the field, of course, was UAPs, right? Or the ET presence, all of that. To the Stars Academy of Arts and Sciences. Okay, fine. And it was going to be a public service corporation, so it could raise money. Always a good thing. One of the things that's really held back the disclosure movement, going back to the beginning, was the embargo. There's nothing there. And anybody that thinks there is a little wacky. So you don't want to go there, professor, editor, journalist, philanthropist, whatever. When you went on the website, it listed the people that had come out with it.
Oh, wow.
Okay. It's that group of 10.
Yeah.
What I call the Magnificent 10. And they had their photo up there and they had their bio. And I looked at that page, and I was in England at the time. I had gone to England to chill. I was very distressed, and so I mean, I love England. And while I was there, I got to go to Moscow and do an interview. Blah blah, whatever. The point is I was off the field when the game began. And by the time I got back in January or February, I think it was late January of 2018, the game was underway, and I arrived, and they said, "Go sit on the bench." Right? You know, you're on the field, but you're on the bench here, dude. We're already playing, and so I looked at those 10 people, which included Louis Elizondo, Christopher Mellon, Gary Nolan, who are very well known. Okay. It included Steve Justice, which was very significant, though he has gotten much less exposure because he kind of stepped back. It included Jim Semivan, right? And 5 others. And the one thing they all had in common was they were essentially retired members of the military intelligence complex.
Wow. Yeah.
One way or the other. Now, retired from the military intelligence complex, the reason I put the quotes on it is that when you retire, that doesn't mean you don't get the odd contract. You don't get the odd post-disclosure kind of thing where you can make some nice money.
Right.
And we understand that. But you're basically not under the government payroll, getting a W-2, that kind of thing. And you're basically not answering to a boss. And I instantly knew what had happened. At least I felt I knew what had happened. Why are these 2 people putting their name and photo on this site with that complex agenda, engaging this issue in a grand way? Because I was pretty certain this was not going to help their post-retirement financial situation, or who they could invite to their birthday party, or what events they might get invited to. This was not a help in that regard. They were taking a substantial risk, though nothing like the risk they would have taken if they'd have come out 20, 25, 30 years earlier.
Right. They probably wouldn't be here.
And so here was what I concluded, is that, and I've been talking about this, I mean, it wasn't a shock to me, it wasn't a surprise, that over the years, from 47 to 17, right, basically 70 years exactly, every year that went by, with some fluctuations, the number of people in our military intelligence complex, which includes all the armed services, all of the intelligence agencies, okay, and of course the Department of Defense, the number of people in that vast complex who felt that the truth about the extraterrestrial presence or non-human presence that was absolutely manifest in July of 1947 needed to be provided to the American people. Now, I'm not saying it was a huge number in 47, 48, 49. I'm simply saying that it grew. It never shrunk. Right. It grew. And as we get closer to the present, it grew a lot. And in the years prior to 2017, somewhere in there, it hit a critical mass. It crossed a threshold point where the number of people was so great that the number of discussions that were taking place privately at dinners and, party, or maybe at the lunchroom and the Pentagon or whatever the hell, right, had gotten to the point where the idea of a group coming forward manifested, right? In other words, we're going to take action, not while under the employ of the U.S. government, which would be a mistake and probably the wrong thing to do, no question. But once we are citizens again, once we're just people. And how it all came together, we've only had some hints about it. We've got some things that have turned up here and there, but we don't really know the full origin story. I'm looking forward to learning it. Until then, we have to sort of connect some dots and try to put some pieces together. But I believe that coming together occurred starting in maybe late 2014 and was probably starting to really come in place. Could have been in 15 as you entered 2016. Certainly was starting to really formulate, and might have been, and at some point was formalized and put on launch mode in 2016. I further believe, and I've never been, and I've said this many times, I've never been correct. It would be very easy. Any number of people call me out and say, you got it wrong. that the plan of these 10 people was to come forward in this organization, as eventually it came out shortly after the election of Hillary Clinton as president of the United States. And there was a very good reason for that. The Clintons had been connected to the issue going all the way back to 2003. And certain researchers like Grant Cameron and myself and some others found out about it, got the documents confirming it, and had been putting that into the media for 15 years.
Right.
Okay? Endlessly. And as it happened, it was one of the formal parts of my activism during the lead up to the election. I was all over this issue in the media with some help from a very esteemed publisher in Washington. And the net result of that work was, in the 2 years leading up to the election, starting in early 2015, ultimately helped to generate 400 articles in standard mainstream media talking about the connection between Secretary of State candidate Clinton, her husband Bill Clinton, their chief advisor John Podesta, and some others. Literally articles generating questions coming in from the media to them, meaning, can you comment on this and can you comment on that? And I learned early on that they were not getting any responses at all.
Oh, wow.
Meaning this was not something they could respond to, and they knew it.
Right.
And I'm sure they were not happy about it.
I'm sure they weren't.
I don't think that I'm, my picture is hanging on any of their walls. But the thing is that by forcing the media at them, by forcing them to confront questions, they had to strategically respond. And the way they responded, which is very well done, because John Podesta is a genius. And he was, of course, a key advisor to the Clintons and to Secretary Clinton. And and one of the co-chairs of her campaign, was to set up selected interviews where they would be asked questions that they could respond to in ways that showed that they were interested. They did not dismiss it, right? They were kind of on board. And these were in shows where they had complete control of the question and the answer and the circumstance, like Jimmy Kimmel, right? And like Late Night, and Helen DeGeneres and so forth, as well as a careful interview to Politico, this kind of thing. Ultimately, there were 11 public statements that emerged from that campaign, either in response to questions on a talk show or to a tweet or something. 11, all documented on my website. And obviously, every time they did that, the amount of media just increased. And so, obviously they knew that was going to happen, but I think they were resigned to it because ultimately she was going to win, and she was going to be the disclosure president and avenge how her husband was treated when he tried to engage the issue, and basically his own government told him to go pound sand. Right? Some of the attacks on the Clintons, I believe, were not just about indiscretions of the president, but because they were trying to get at the UFO files, and there was a lot of people in government didn't like that at all. And so I think that may have been motivation for some of the attacks on the president anyway. So that is what was going on leading up to her election, and she was the major front runner.
Right.
And so for this reason and others, I believe the plan was she gets elected. They launched the To the Stars Academy of Arts and Science, their fundraising stock deal for the public benefit corporation raises, I don't know, 25 million, 30 million, and they have plenty of money, and their exposure, right, as former members of the military intelligence community is brief. Right. They're going to come out probably maybe December,
right,
during the transition period. She goes into the White House, the press follow her in with 1 million UFO questions, and whatever happens leads to disclosure under President Clinton early in 2017. Great plan, wonderful plan, love it. Okay, that's what I pretty much figured out the moment I saw that website. And everything that happened after that, we can go through it if you want. The point is, everything that happened after just kept confirming that.
Right.
Right. Uh, in a sense, right? But of course, they did not come out after she was elected because she wasn't elected. And then they had a very tough question, a problem to solve because they were kind of outed. One of the things that outed this project before they launched was, again, some of the craziness that was going on back then. When Julian Assange made the fateful decision to dump all of John Podesta's emails that they had gotten in their usual way into the world. Now, they'd already definitely put the hurts to the Democratic Party when they dumped a whole bunch of emails from the Democratic National Committee earlier. And the effect of those emails was to out some serious bias on the part of what should have been the neutral committee against other candidates, particularly Bernie.
Yeah.
And as a result, it caused a lot of problems. But then Julian Assange made the decision to dump those emails from, put them out before the election that they had gotten from Podesta's emails. And not just to put them out like they usually do, which is to put them out and say, okay, here they are. Media, go look through them and do what you're going to do, right? In other words, I'm a journalist. Here's stuff. Do what you're going to do. No, they deliberately and specifically put them out in tranches of 5,000 a day.
Wow.
Sometimes 2 days, leading right up to the election. Okay. And when he was asked about it, he said cutely, well, look, when you do something like that, the idea is to get attention. And so by doing it, we got more attention. Yeah. Okay. Well, as a result of doing that, he was literally trying to affect that election. He was also doing it with the DNC because he really had a problem with the Clintons and particularly her, because statements had been made that he was not happy about. He was mad. He was angry. And so he stepped out of his role as the, quote, journalist extreme to activist extreme, trying to affect that election. And I'm just going to, speculate here, take a wild guess that may be the reason why he ended up in a UK jail for years and years and didn't finally get back to Australia until recently, because he stepped over a line there. All right. But the interesting thing, and the reason I'm bringing this up, is that when those emails came out, 92 of them had a UFO connection. All right. And all of those 92 emails are up on my website right now. And I posted them with commentary, all 92. And what you learn from those emails is that there was a significant interaction going on between Tom DeLonge, who ended up being the CEO of the To the Stars Academy, and Podesta in the campaign. A lot was happening. Introductions were being made, right? Sit downs were happening, exchanges of information. And so what that confirmed, which I knew about, is that they were targeting the Clinton administration. All right. And so that was outed. Those are out there. And so as the To the Stars Academy, which included those 10 plus Tom DeLonge, post-election are thinking about this, they're realizing that some statements made by Tom DeLonge on some interviews, particularly with George Knapp, as well as those emails, they were kind of outed. And at some point, this was probably going to come out anyway, and they were going to be faced with whatever. But I think most importantly, because they really wanted to do what they wanted to do, they had a goal, and they wanted to achieve that, and so they made the bold and I think courageous decision to come out anyway in October of 2017, approximately 9 months into the administration of another president, President Donald Trump.
Right.
And Boom. That's what I saw right then. All right. And so history, I believe, is going to say the turning point to the truth embargo occurred on that day, October 11th, 2017, when this organization announced itself.
Yeah, I've like I said, I've been since 2008. I've had my podcast and really been diving into this amazing research that you've done, and I appreciate you. I appreciate you and Linda Moulton Howe and many of our people that have really stuck their necks out and put the work in to get the information out. And I don't want to go off topic, but I do want to touch on this a little bit with.
Sure.
We were talking about before, there's so many podcasts out there now. Social media is like overwhelming with so much information going out. You don't know where the information is coming from. I mean, just because it may say Margaret, you don't know who this is coming from. So what I find discouraging is, and also it could be a little conspiracy theory, so much information is coming out there, you don't know what's true. You don't know if it's just for likes, if it's just to throw off the scent. And what is your take with social media? And, because before, we had History Channel television shows. We had radio, AM, FM radio. We didn't have even podcasts. So we got to get bits and pieces. We had to wait till Monday night to hear it. But now it's 24/7. What is your thoughts on the disclosure? Do you feel like government could be, and not just U.S. governments, but governments from all over the world, and just organizations that really are trying to dilute the truth about the disclosure coming? Because even me, I'm like, you can hear within 5 minutes 1,000 different topics.
Yeah, I get it. Sure. Look, the government has been interfering with the truth process from the get-go, going back to 47, pretty much. They may have known something before 47. They may have had a crashed vehicle, but They didn't have a problem. And of course, hopefully that history will come out.
Right.
But whatever was known prior to 47 was very tightly held. Very tightly held. So can't speculate. I like to start July 1947. It's a great place to start.
Right.
Okay. And so from that day forward, and the reason they had a problem is because Walter Haut, with the approval of the head of the base, Blanchard, put out a press release and said we have a saucer. Right? The AP picked it up, and articles are returned. It was like, damn, it was like they were probably thinking, and it's to the government's credit that neither Haut or Blanchard really was punished for this.
Right.
They had fine careers. It's all good. I think Haut maybe I suffered a little bit more, but because he got involved kind of in trying to deal with the issue later on, and it was tough. But Blanchard had a fine career. It was like that guy that was running one of the ICBM silos south of Moscow, when they misinterpreted a missile out of, I don't know, one of the Scandinavian countries, and their system automatically calculated that it was on a trajectory to strike a Russian city and triggered a launch sequence thing, right? which whatever reason went to him, and so his launch thing gets a launch, right? And so everybody's, and so he's got to make this decision, right? And so he's thinking about it, and something in him said, I'm not sure about this. He doesn't launch his missiles. And then shortly thereafter, they discovered, no, that was a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
mm-hmm.
if he had launched those missiles, we're talking nuclear war.
Oh,
we're
for
talking,
sure.
It's over, guy. Okay. And the thing was, I learned later that he went back to Moscow. He had a fine career. They didn't punish him. It was all cool. I think they appreciated the fact that, man, you did the right thing there, my friend. Okay, sort of like that. So Blanchard was okay. So, but they put their press release out, and from that moment forward, I don't know how much time they would have gotten, how the truth embargo would have gone if he doesn't put that press release out, and they're able to completely contain Roswell from the get-go. And all you got is some tales from people that were kind of there. I don't know. But that just literally set the scene. And so the truth embargo starts right there, and they managed to get 77 years out of it. Okay. Now, with that in mind, Let me help you here. The truth embargo was inevitable. And as the years went by, they managed every aspect that they could, whether it was radio or television or major newspapers. Okay. Of course, NDAs and various techniques they used to keep people online. It wasn't too difficult because the threat of nuclear war, which has been plaguing us still to this day, was a pretty big deal. And they always had that card. In other words, don't talk about this because we cannot predict the known or unknown unknowns that will happen post confirmation. It could end up triggering nuclear war, and you'll be responsible for ending civilization. You don't want that on your resume. And people go, "You're absolutely right." So they had a comfortable, right? So they managed it pretty well. But of course, at some point, it gets increasingly ridiculous, and it started to get ridiculous once the Cold War ended, right? And we had a chance for true detente, as well as major serious reforms in the relationship with nations that could lead us to a relatively peaceful world. Now, as it happened, we squandered that opportunity, but still, right, the situation changed. And the basis justification for that truth embargo immediately starts eroding when the Berlin Wall comes down, and Rockefeller was one of the first people to really make a move. Okay, so he goes down in history for that. And from that period on, from 93 on, the truth embargo's problems just grow and grow and grow for a number of reasons. Okay, but one of the reasons that has affected our society in ways that we're still trying to sort out, meaning it's like you got to have a PhD in about 4 different areas of study to kind of get your handle on what the hell has happened since about 1993. And what I'm talking about is smartphones, right, with cameras, all right, which were coming on, the rise of the internet, which starts right about the time that I jump into this in 96. And so the internet is coming out. I think just before that, my computer, I think I was using Mosaic, right? I was using Netscape, but I had email, but overall the internet is just happening. Of course, it was going to exponentially grow. Okay, but it was in play. Okay, so the internet is coming on 96, 97, 98. People are communicating. Millions of emails are flying around. People are creating websites. UFO was one of the top search terms, even at that point. Number 2 behind, porn, but that's understandable. And so things are happening. But by and large, people are great. This is a technological revolution. I love it. Okay. Phones, smartphones, I can text, I can do that, whatever. This is great, okay? And the internet is fantastic, and it's all great. Okay, fine. Well, as we know, we didn't know what lay ahead. That's fine. It wasn't our fault, right? It wasn't like we were going to universally, globally just walk away from these texts because they look too dangerous. We were going to jump in with both feet. That's what we do. We've been doing it for thousands of years. And so what comes next is social media. That hits the early aughts, right? Culminating certainly with Facebook in 2003. Boom. All right. Immediately, millions upon tens of millions of people are gathering 5,000 friends. That was your max. Multiply that times millions. You got this massive number. They're communicating through DMs and whatever, and that's just growing. And people are creating pages for UFO pages. Lots of UFO pages, lots of UFO groups, all kind of stuff. And so that's just, it's going out. Meanwhile, the phones are getting better and better and better. Social media is growing. Other social media platforms are turning up. Instagram, TikTok, the whole 9 yards. But the big one was 2006, Twitter. So Twitter turns up. Oh, my God. This is one of the great activist tools of all time. And by and large, these are all global phenomena. Right? Some countries can block and so forth. But basically, this is just spreading in the U.S. It's spreading around the entire world.
Right.
The issue is global. And so it's filling up with UFO, ET stuff, UAP stuff, filling up with it. And the amount of communication going on is huge, right? The sharing of information. And of course, the formation of groups and organizations and all of this stuff, right? And the truth embargo was having to deal with all of this. It's in other words, finally, the truth embargo in the United States government, God bless it, has got an opponent worthy of the fight. And basically, I think many people inside the government knew we can't win this. We cannot possibly win. Okay. So as we go forward, it just gets worse and worse and worse. Okay. And what was happening is the activist movement now had this massive set of tools that couldn't even been dreamed about in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s to use to challenge this embargo. And they were free, right? They were free, okay? You didn't need any money. And so we're pounding away at the truth embargo in many ways, countless ways, and the awareness of the reality of the ET presence is spreading to the far corners of the world. Now, it is the case that the problematic aspects of the phones, of obviously the computer and the internet, and the social media networks and so forth, developed as well. And what we learned eventually, these things are dangerous. Yeah, they are. They're really dangerous. There isn't an example of technology that isn't dangerous, including the hammer. They invented the hammer and people started building things with it. It was unbelievable, but other people were killing people with it. And so that's the way it is. Okay. And so it's really, really dangerous. It's affecting our society in more ways than we can count. It's changing the worldviews. It's undermining this and undermining that because we didn't really prep for it. We didn't get any IKEA instructions ahead of it. We basically just kind of dealt with it as it unfolded. The computer, the iPhone, the internet, social media, the whole 9 yards. And we could not possibly adapt to it in a responsible way. We didn't have the time. And so it's creating all kinds of problems. And one of the problems is the fact that it is the home for uncounted millions of rabbit holes. It is the greatest disinformation tool of all time, propaganda tool of all time, whatever. And the ability to use it and not be hurt by it is directly proportional to how smart you are, how much education you have, how many books you've read, your upbringing, everything else. And guess what? That's not universal. It varies from place to place. And anybody that does not have the necessary skills to deal with this monster is going to have a problem. Not only for people, but institutions. Right. So if you're an institution and you don't know how to deal with this monster, you're going to have a problem. And my institution, let's talk about the entire election system of any country on the planet. Okay, so we got that. And that's what you're referring to. And I get it.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that these tools were not being used to just pound away at the truth embargo. From countless films being taken with cameras. Oh, yeah, sure. Could be fake, right? Could not be fake. But, when they start pouring in by the thousands, well, it's hard to imagine that's all fake. But, of course, the development of networks, the building up of influencers, and so forth, they could not keep up with this. And so ultimately, the social media and the internet and everything else guaranteed the truth embargo's days were numbered. And we were literally in the end game. But then came, later in this process, I think the killing blow, right? The one that finally just absolutely puts it away. And it's something that I don't think people appreciated soon enough. I sort of did, but eventually people are starting to get the picture. And it is the podcast revolution. This is something else, right? Above and beyond, the phone and the computer and the internet and social media. What happened is that the evolution of very cheap, high quality content creating technology, the cameras, the microphones and all of that, the lighting, also free editing software that hell you could have made a major motion picture with back in the 60s, that's being used by teenagers. Okay. And then the graphics and everything else. What happened was it obviously became apparent that you could be a 14-year-old living in your basement and you could be doing podcasts and maybe have 10, 15,000 followers inside of 6 months. And so the podcast thing took off from nothing to where now nobody's really sure how many they are. I've heard numbers like 7 million. I don't know what the number is, but it's a huge number. And people say, well, okay, fine. So people are doing podcasts. Why does it matter? Because people are watching them. Not only that, but one of the other things, of course, that was significant was bandwidth. So you had cheap tech, you had so equipment, you could do it, but you had the bandwidth. The bandwidth starts exploding.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not, so you can actually broadcast on the net, right? And so the being able to broadcast, so the bandwidth can carry 7 million podcasts. And so with that bandwidth, people are able to do long form podcasts. And then you had the platforms, right? So the platforms start evolving. YouTube, of course, was a game changer. YouTube wasn't just another platform. It's a massive event in the history of the evolution of the internet. Now it's so big, it's hard to even comprehend. And so now, if you're a podcaster, it virtually costs you nothing. You can podcast for nothing, and then you can archive it on YouTube for nothing and build followers for nothing. All right. Now, if you want to start spending some money, you can do some pretty cool things. Okay. And before you know it, these podcasts are getting viewers in very large numbers. Before you know it, they're being monetized. Now these kids in the basement are making money. And then as the numbers got bigger, they're making big money. And the milestone probably of this is not the deal that, oh God, now I've lost it. It was an earlier deal, but it really wasn't podcasting. It was with one of the, God, I can't, again, I have memory issues. Anyway, the milestone is Joe Rogan.
Right.
When Joe Rogan signs that $100 million
Spotify
contract for his podcast, okay, that was a milestone. Now, believe me, there are plenty of other people making money, but this was a statement. Oh my God, do you have any idea how powerful this is? Now, the other thing that's happening along with this, again, internet, right? Because I'm trying to make the point that, there's a lot of problems there, but believe me, it is a force of nature.
For sure.
Is the rise of something else that has a name, and the name is relatively recent, and it should have been word of the year, and it may have been. I need to go back and check on this to see if this was the word of the year, because damn well should have been. And the word I am referring to is influencer, right? In the modern sense. And everybody knows what an influencer is. It is anybody, because of how smart they are, how famous they are, how talented they are, whatever the hell, who was able, and it could be somebody that just puts up clever videos they do in their home, right? It is somebody able to generate not 100,000 followers, not 1 million followers, not 10 million followers, 100 million followers. Okay. Not only that, they're able to generate vast income. A number of years ago, when they posted the highest grossing, I guess you could say, podcast on YouTube, some god awful number. I forget what it was, 20 million, 15, I forget what it was. It was a podcast of a child with the help of the child's parents that did reviews of toys.
Oh, I remember that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so that was a 10-year-old influencer. Now, there are plenty of them out there, and we know about them. We know about the beast, okay, which is off the charts. Okay. I assure you, if you could have predicted the beast 15, 20 years ago, you would have been a savant. But the influencer that gets, the influencer that I admire the most right now is Taylor Swift. Is she an influencer? It is hard to put a number on it. And to her credit, she doesn't use it. She's not too heavy-handed, whereas the beast is incredibly heavy-handed. But let me tell you, there are a lot of influencers out there. These are now powerful people, and they are essentially independent operators. And so if one of those influencers with 200 million followers goes on TikTok and says, I have just had an experience where some grays walked through my bedroom wall, elevated me up, took me into a craft, and it's changed my life, all hell would break loose. They haven't done it. But there's a lot of influence out there that are toying with the idea. All right. And so the truth embargo is up against that. What in the hell are you going to do with influence, with that power, a podcast revolution that's literally generating massive content?
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing you can do. It is game over. And it is that I present to you. Don't focus on the misinformation and propaganda. We'll deal with it as best we can. Don't focus too much on the fact that iPhones are ruining the education of millions of kids who are not learning how to read, God knows, and all the other stuff. It's a problem. We need to deal with it, and I hope we do. Focus on the fact that this technology has created a citizen journalism world that is inconceivable to anybody prior to 20 years ago, 30 years ago. It has created a citizen journalism world, right? A citizen superstar world that was inconceivable. And now it's there. And so the end result about that is that regular people who don't have necessarily PhDs, or they've won huge prizes, or have huge contacts, or even billionaires, right, or have big connections with the government, just regular people, have power at a level unprecedented in the history of the human race. And when they choose to exercise that power, I assure you, there is no government that ultimately can withstand it, though some can withstand it better than others. The color revolutions were triggered by the internet to a large degree, and I can talk about other things. And so all of that is what helped lead to the breakthrough of the To the Stars Academy and the 7 years of political unprecedented engagement involving 4 tranches of legislation, the formation of organizations, the funding of those organizations, and eventually the hearing process was underway, the creation of a UAP caucus, other organizations being formed by heavy-duty people, Soul Foundation, UAP Disclosure Caucus, or the UAP Disclosure Fund, the New Paradigm Institute. I could go on and on and on. More recent, okay. I'm small, but I was early, right? 1996, and so you put it all together in a package, Tony. And I'll go further in this. I see disclosure no later than 60 days after the inauguration of the next president. We're that close. Wow. And a lot of people are agreeing with me now. Other people are coming forward independently saying, this is it.
Well, I think we're all ready. I don't know who would not be ready at this point in history. But Stephen's going to be at Conscious Life Expo, February 7th through the 10th. But his workshop is February 7th from 2 to 3:30 in the Carmel room. Yeah, Carmel, right. I couldn't. My eyes are not as good as it used to be.
Neither am I.
But get your tickets now, because like we said earlier, it's going to be packed, and you need to get the tickets to enjoy Stephen and hundreds of more speakers. So please go to consciouslifeexpo.com, get your tickets. But Stephen, thank you so much. You were great. It's been a while since you've been here, and I appreciate you taking the time out of your day and sharing our 2025 disclosure. I'm ready. I got my popcorn and Kit Kats and all that good stuff.
Well, I have your audience. Please visit paradigmresearchgroup.org. It's now a 501c3.
Nice.
Or HollywoodDisclosureAlliance.org. It's also a 501c3. Or the New Paradigm Institute. It's a 501c3 nonprofit. Or the Soul Foundation, also a nonprofit. UAP Disclosure Fund, also a nonprofit. Visit them, educate yourself. And if you're somebody who has the ability to really financially support this extraordinary work as we lead to disclosure, we would be most humbled if you provided some funding to any or all of those organizations.
Perfect. Well, get involved, everyone. That's how we make a difference. And Stephen, thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Everybody in the chat room, thank you so much for your comments. Please share this show and like, follow, and make sure you check us out on our Apple and iHeartRadio, Spotify. We're there for our audio version, and please subscribe to our channel. We're here every Friday, and Bonnie Burkhart's on Wednesday with Truth Be Told Transformation. And until next time, please, I always say, take care of yourself and each other, because that's all we have. Until next time, take care. Bye.